Well, it was a group of people that understood that Cambridge needed a mid-sized venue, that there was the boat race and there was the corn exchange, but there was nothing in between. And from a promoting point of view, that was quite difficult because no one could take a risk, or it was very difficult to take a risk on a venue like the corn exchange, which would have held at that time about 1,200, later about 1,500. And then the boat race, which probably was 100, maybe 120. So the idea was, could we have a flexible venue that would hold maybe 300, 400, 500? And there were lots of like-minded people in Cambridge that were willing to put some effort into trying to campaign for that. I think it had been set up before. I think I heard of it and thought, that's interesting, I'll go to a meeting. And Jem and Lynn, who were also involved, lived in Great Eastern Street, so I sort of knew them. There was various things happening at the cooperative, Argyle Street Cooperative, so that was at the other end of the street. And I suppose because I promoted events and had a few contacts, there was a fair bit I could sort of bring to it, and I had the time. And I like gathering people around to get things done. And there was some dilapidated recording studios, which in my mind are always near St Matthew's School, not St Paul's School, but next to some waste ground there, which at the time was like a car park. That's the sort of location.
And how many people do you think were meeting at a time?
A good meeting, 8. I mean,
it's a small group.
Yeah, no, it was a really small group. Yeah, and it fluctuated. I think there were some of the people in that group worked at those studios, so they knew about sound and bands and music, and I think there were others that were interested in theatre. They probably came a little bit later. It was definitely at the start mainly a campaign for music. I think the theatre came a little bit later on. I wouldn't say there's a hierarchy. For things like this to succeed, they have to be fun. You have to have a reason to meet, and people need to get some sort of reward out of it. So it was fun. It was just an idea. That's the thing. Looking back now, you kind of think, the junction's there, and it's a physical thing that it's got 30 years of history. But at the time, it was a very precarious idea, and people fought over that idea. But people wanted different things, the city council, I remember at the time, were very supportive. And it wasn't just the Labour group, it was the Labour group, the Conservative group, and the Lib Dems at the time. The Lib Dem guy was a guy called Andrew Duff. The Tory was a guy called Graham, I want to say Jones, but that's not right. Graham someone. And there were some different Labour people. It sort of changed. But I remember early on, one of the guys was the leader of the council. And there was also a woman called Annie, she had to step back, but she was also really supportive. And they didn't, although they got it from a policy point of view, they could see it was good for the city. And people talked about a young person's venue. People could see the need. They rolled their sleeves up and got involved in record sales, which we would hold at the Guildhall. They made the Guildhall available for people to use, and that was the first time that really took me by surprise, that these different political parties would work together for the common good. I'd always assumed that people would be at each other's throats, or they'd be all jostling over who takes credit for things. But they really worked together, even as the political landscape within Cambridge changed, and the city council would change colour. I think it would have been in response to articles in the Cambridge Evening News, where they probably would have felt criticised that there wasn't something like this in Cambridge, and there were in plenty of other cities, and there definitely were in Norwich and cities, of a similar size. Obviously, well, Newcastle, Sheffield. You had places like the Sheffield Lead Mill, the Norwich Riverfront. I wasn't really involved in them. I probably would say I was like more of a bystander. I suppose it was that. Yeah, it was that kind of public pressure that not shamed them into it, but made them realise that this wasn't going to go away. That the people campaigning were quite well organised, and were quite consistent in their message and their demands, and could clearly get hold of the local media and get stories told. When things got moving was when Eric Orme was appointed to do the sort of feasibility study. I think Eric was appointed for a set number of days, and then he did a lot of the sort of canvassing. Once you've got someone in post, and then I think he set up visits to some other venues where we could sort of see what sort of things were available and what sort of things could be possible here. Because he was based within the city council, then he could talk to the architects department, and not sure the leisure department was quite involved at that point. I think there was always a bit of sensitivity about just about the existing venues like the Cornish Show, maybe the Folk Festival and others. They were like the established things that were happening at that point, and I think that the idea of a group of people campaigning for a venue, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. There were times where it felt like a battle within arts and entertainment about getting things done. I think we were quite demanding and quite, a bit of a pain in the arse to them at times. I remember that thing not quite being within the city council employees. It was not necessarily sitting right with them. I felt it took a while before it was accepted, before it became mainstream. Probably until the building was built. When Eric came, he was then based in. I'm pretty sure he was based in Mandela House. We did some events in the car park at Mandela House. We did 2 series of comedy events in the car park, because alternative comedy was just taken off at that point as well, and they were really successful. So we managed to get a license so we could sell alcohol, and I think it was like every Friday night, and they would always sell out. We did 2 shows, did the same show twice, and they were enormously popular.
Can you remember who you had?
Jack D. yeah. No, yeah. No, these were. It was. No, but it was done through. I think it was like programmed through the Comedy Store, or maybe it was Avalon, one of the comedy agents. And they made it easy. They said, "Oh, we'll do whatever it was, £200 a night for 3 performers, and because it's a charity, you keep the bar and whatever you do over tickets on that." Guildhall, yeah. So that's right. So Paul, that was his gig, Paul Darkin, and is a great promoter. And that I remember once the Junction opened, that we relied on that a lot for funding. They always sold out.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So it sounds like even before the Junction started, the fact that the Junction was about to start just started to create a real buzz about lots of live acts.
Definitely. Yeah. And everyone was young and had energy, and it just sort of worked. Everybody liked everybody, and Eric, I suppose what you'd call him now is he's sort of like a community development worker, and he was. So then Eric came in as the the community development work, or the junction coordinator or something. Or even then it wasn't called this, Cambridge Venue Group coordinator. And then the company was formed, Cambridge Venue Group Limited, and 3 councillors were trustees on in that company, and I was definitely a trustee. I think Lynn Disley was a trustee. Yeah, because the name The Junction came relatively late. That came through a competition. Yeah. But the Cambridge Venue Group was still doing this feasibility study, looking at different sites. So up the road, the Newmarket roundabout was considered at one point. The warehouse, I'm pretty sure, on next to Hills Road Bridge. There was a fruit and veg warehouse there way back when. As you go up Hills Road Bridge on the right, that was definitely looked at. But everything was turned down because it was all about noise. Nobody was locally was going to say, yes, we'll have that next to us. Which is why the cattle market was so good, because there weren't any neighbours. It was a cattle market. The neighbours were the railway station. That was quite a clever site. I can remember at the time feeling quite frustrated that it wasn't moving quickly enough. And it got more and more expensive because of the delays. It would have been a time of relative high inflation. And suddenly this building, which was going to cost 500,000, was suddenly going to cost 700,000, and it cost 900,000. But I think that's just normal.